Hi, everyone. We're back today with Ashleigh and myself continuing to have a dialogue about the intersection of spirituality, trauma, and exercise in the form of CrossFit specifically. And what we're going to do today is take a closer look at the way in which the modality of CrossFit and the practices and discipline around the exercise form or method can actually coincide with, enhance, parallel different skills and disciplines or characteristics that we develop in our own lives that are or seem to be outside of the realm of physical movement. For me, the effort of talking about this is a way to connect a little more thoroughly what our bodies do in relationship to how we gain, we can call them spiritual qualities or personality characteristics or traits that help us develop in the world. One of the reasons that I started even thinking about CrossFit related to what I'm mentioning about traits is that I realized when I started the practice of CrossFit that so many things that I was doing in the gym coincided with processes or psychological processes I've had in my own life that have been challenges. So, for instance, I had a massive concussion in 2009, and it really messed with my vision. The story about that is a long one, but one of the things that is really scary to me now is going downstairs or sometimes driving if I'm stressed because I immediately go into a double vision framework. When I get a little nervous about a CrossFit movement, the same thing happens. But what I've learned to do in the CrossFit exercise is relax my eyes, and my vision will actually improve during an intense workout. It's been completely phenomenal for me. But that activity is something that I now carry over into walking downstairs to have the understanding that my body can do this without me being really worried about it. Or when I'm driving, the fact that I notice that I get stressed in the act of driving when there's a lot of cars moving around me. Part of that has to do with the peripheral vision damage, that I can kind of breathe and relax, and I remember a workout, and I can actually make the vision better in real time. So that's a real specific example. What we're really going to talk about today is a little bit more abstract, but it's worth mentioning to try to help you get an idea of how we're thinking about these parallels. Ashleigh, you want to speak to that, add to it, give it some flavor?
Yeah, thank you for the example that you shared. That is a phenomenal story. Huge. And I think yeah, there's definitely something in the traits that are developed in CrossFit that transfer across into everyday life. And something that I've explored is this concept, I think we mentioned it in the last recording, is this concept of a rule of life. So for those that might not be familiar with the rule of life, this was a practice by the Benedictine monks. And it was a way for them to show up in community with one another. It incorporated a variety of spiritual practices for them to kind of relate to each other, relate to God, relate to self. And so I've kind of been exploring this concept of the rule of life and how it relates to CrossFit. And looking at my own journey, actually, I think back to so I first started CrossFit in 2012. And there were elements of my character that I was a lot younger then, and there were elements of my character that were still quite underdeveloped, I guess. And it was only when I went into CrossFit, I was face to face with this sport that challenged me in so many different ways. So not only did I have to build this into my life, into my routine, So therefore it built structure and routine at a time when I really needed it, actually. It was almost a lifesaver for me after going through something quite traumatic prior to that. So just the act of having this in my calendar every day, waking up for it, was really profound. And then I found that this wasn't something that I could just kind of rock up to and shut my heart off to, shut my body off to, and then go home. I was challenged by the people around me to be better. And I don't know that I necessarily like the phrase like to be a better version of myself, but there is elements of truth of it.
Mm.
I think about when I first started competing. So I started competing probably about a year into CrossFit. Um, and I have this really horrendous memory of me doing quite badly in a competition and getting really frustrated. I got angry at the judge. I got angry at the other competitors. I got angry at myself. And I remember just like throwing my weights down. It's so embarrassing thinking about it now. And I walked off. I just walked off the workout mid-competition.
Wow.
And my coach came up to me and he sat me down. And firstly, he was curious, which is I really remember. This is one of the reasons why I loved him. He was really curious about what was going on for me in that moment. Um, and he heard me. He let me talk. And then afterwards, he said, "Ash, like we don't do that here. We don't do that. Like, there is an element of where you kind of have to compose yourself and, you have to be aware of who's around you and you represent your gym in this moment and you represent yourself. Do you want to be known as somebody that walked off mid-workout?" And that was a real turning point in my journey for me. And I think it really started to build this new kind of strength in me where I then had to go home and be like, actually, like, were you proud of the person you were today? It got hard and you had a bit of a response to it. And so you freaked out and walk off. Like, do you want to be seen as that person? And I just love that my coach really didn't shame me for that. He really kind of like came around me and just challenged the person that I wanted to be. And that really helped kind of develop my character. And so that's kind of just a long-winded way of saying that, it is through being in community, through showing up and having a structure and routine that elements of my character have been challenged. And therefore, this has been it has been a spiritual practice for me, and has really kind of aided in my own growth and personal development.
I think you point out something important about the sport that we want to keep. I think you'll agree with this, that we want to keep putting forward, which is the element of the community. So we're going to be talking a lot about the self today and the development of the self and the things that individuals get out of the particular practice and discipline of doing something like CrossFit. But part of what makes it special in both of our experiences, I think, has to do with the community that's built around the practice. And I actually was thinking as you were talking, I have shared with you that I'm getting ready to compete in a ballroom competition, and the ballroom dancing, yes, quite different than CrossFit itself in
I love
many ways. But my coach that I use as a coach at CrossFit is also helping me develop practices around the act of competing and helping me understand how to take the techniques and movements within dance that I need to work on and integrate those with the CrossFit moves, or alternatively finesse the CrossFit moves in a way that will facilitate that growth in dance. And I mean, this is Capo, shout out. It's been amazing. He's amazing. He's been so creative. But I guess underlying what I'm saying is, even leaving the gym today, I was thinking, gosh, he is such a part of my journey. The people that are in there who are working out with me today, thinking about these principles for my dance competition, we're all like together doing it. And I don't know, it's such an amazing phenomenon that I haven't seen in any kind of other gym.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, that is the beauty of the community, that you could come in with, I have this competition to train for, completely non-related to what goes on in here. Or I've seen people come in who have who've lost family members, or they're really struggling at work, and whatever it is they bring, they come into that gym, and instantly they have walked into a community of people who want to come alongside you, who want to walk that journey with you. And they'll say, hey, like, you've had a really rough day, or hey, like, you need to aim for this. Let's come around. I want to come around and I want to challenge you and I want to champion you. Let's do a really hard workout. And I just think, like, it's so hard to find that anywhere else. Um, but at the same time, I think, that, like, when we're talking about community, also being aware of the fact that that comes with, we're all humans and it can be messy.
Mm.
And I think recognizing that as much as the community are there to enhance your growth, ultimately, like, a lot of the responsibility does kind of fall on you, and we kind of can't look to this community to be our saving grace, and to rescue us and whatever it is that we're journeying through, because ultimately, like, that, there'll be times when the community messes up, someone does something wrong, or someone offends you or hurts you, and I think we have to be really careful that it doesn't become this kind of crutch, as it
Mm.
were, to almost hide from our own interior work that we need to do as well.
Excellent point. I think that's such an
Mm,
excellent point, that while it's enhancing and part of our development, it's also important not to idealize the structure, because it's not perfect. And as you were talking, I was
yeah.
thinking it's kind of like a family. Like, there's no perfection, and everybody's human. So there are things that go wrong, sometimes vastly wrong, but there are still possibilities, I guess, especially
Mm.
with good and effective leadership.
Yeah, so as we kind of reflect on this concept of community and having a structure and a framework, it really reminds me of the Northumbria community. And they are a monastic community here in the UK, in the north of England. And a quote that comes from them is, they say that it's an exterior framework. So they're kind of referring to, like, a rule of life and having structure within community. So this is an exterior framework for an interior journey. And I love that, because I think, that's what frameworks are there. They're there to encourage our interior journey. And if we take it for what it is, and we kind of extract the beauty of it, and we recognize that, again, it's there to facilitate, then that can really, be a catalyst for our interior journey. And yeah, I thought that was really profound.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Um, so we created this list, a nice little academic list, as we're both, proper academics, actually, in our hearts and souls, we're little nerds on this.
Yes, we are.
I can tell when you're talking sometimes. I'm like, oh wow, we're similar in how we think even.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
I love
So
it.
and you know what, I think also, like, for me, the way that I live inside my head that's so academic, it doing the physical is such a contrast, that it's like I
Mm,
need it to feel like I'm a balanced person, or else I can go into this place where it's always always in my head. And then,
yeah.
the athleticism of CrossFit and of dancing, but that just is like, it pulls me out of this dark soul. Actually,
Yeah.
that's an interesting metaphor. But
I
go ahead, go ahead.
I was just thinking, back when I was doing my masters, and, like, again, obviously I was so in my head. I'm actually more of a feelings-based person. So a
Um,
lot of my decisions are made from my emotions. And so for me, like, during that time, I would be sat at a screen reading, 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 and, like, the act of, like, separating that and getting into the gym, and especially if I had a big decision to make
oh,
off the back of that, it would get me out of my head, get me out of my heart, and then going into my body is a completely different, it's a shift, isn't it? And I think that is really, really important for me because I can just swim around there all day.
What do you think the difference is in CrossFit? I mean, why wouldn't someone just go into a regular gym and have the same experience? I mean, I have this answer for myself, but what is your opinion about how CrossFit distinguishes itself as a physical practice that highlights your experience? I can relate to what you just said. That's different than, say, if I went in the United States, it's, an Equinox or New York Sports Club if you live in the Northeast.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think for me, this comes back to the concept of play. Um, so I think that has been the biggest factor for me because I am in my head a lot. I'm a very joyful person, but lots of like I work in, anti-human trafficking. Lots of areas of my life are very, very serious. And I do have to make some really big, hard decisions. And so getting into a CrossFit gym, like when I cross that threshold, especially in the gym I'm at the moment, it is just full of a lot of like laughter and joy. And I come in and I'm having to try, there isn't a sport where you will single-handedly in one day learn a new weightlifting skill whilst trying to throw yourself up over the bar for bar muscle up while walking on your hands. And that kind of stuff, like I haven't done since I was a child. And I do not play enough.
Yeah.
My therapist always tells me, like, you need to go and have like fun because I can just work and work and work. And so getting in that gym, like everything has been left behind, and it's the one place that I am so present. And I can just laugh and move my body in a way, and it doesn't matter if I get it wrong. So I think that's what's really important about it for me.
I'm learning the play aspect of it. I
Mm,
think I get a little competitive, and I won't go into spaces that are highly competitive because it kind of
yeah.
pulls me too much. Not that I try to be competitive, but that I put a lot of pressure on myself and then it's not fun.
Hmm.
But the play part, I mean, how you distinguish it, that's really important. And I think, I don't know. I'm gonna take that with me the next time I go into the gym. I like the way that you just set that up. For me, I think what you said about being really present, I think that really resonates with me. I mean,
Mm,
I'm I'm not attached to my phone, but I'm attached to tasks. And if a task comes up on my phone or something that needs to be addressed, there are very few times where I won't respond to it except for when I'm in the middle of a workout.
mm,
And what happens to me once I hit a certain threshold of time where my heart rate is up, I have to pay such attention to what I'm doing because I'm also a form focused person, I would say. Maybe that comes from dance and or just being involved in physical activity as part of my career, actually. Uh, the amount of focus that I exert is very high. And
mm,
it's an intentional move, but as soon as my heart rate hits a certain point, I have to do that. Like I don't know. I don't know why I say have to, whether it's conscious or unconscious. If I choose it, maybe I choose it, but it is something that just happens to me. And once I hit that threshold, it's like the whole world disappears. And now I am just me and my body doing this thing. And it's radically present and it's so concentrated. And I mean, a movement that I will say that I always, this I consciously notice when it's actually happening is when I'm doing a single arm dumbbell snatch. That
mm.
exercise, for some reason, this for you all is you're picking a dumbbell off the floor, bringing it up to you, and then pushing it over your head. But that's not really right. You're not really pushing it. How would you describe that movement?
Well, the snatch is what it kind of one like fluid movement,
Yeah,
isn't it?
fluid.
So
So you shouldn't
yeah,
stop and push it.
yeah. I guess you're kind of like flinging it across your
Yeah,
body with
yeah.
intent.
With intent, but you
Yeah,
have to be
yeah.
pretty focused on
Very
what you're doing.
coordinated.
Yes, it's
Yes.
very coordinated.
Hmm.
So I very much enjoy the coordination of that. But then also, if it's a heavy weight, your heart rate's very high, and
Yeah.
the whole thing in a set is very fluid. So, I'm thinking about the parallels between dance now because I like that fluidity of movement. Anyway, so for me, I think that concentration and that presence is something that I think about and actually often wonder, how can I employ this in my everyday life?
Yeah. And that's, I think, where it, like the lessons I have learned that have transferred over are because I wouldn't say I was genuinely a very present person. If I'm engaged in a task, I'm already thinking about the next task.
I agree.
I'm terrible. I'm a terrible multitasker. I'm doing 100 things. And because of that, I have a tendency to lose things. It's kind of a running joke amongst the people that love me. And so my biggest challenge is to be present. But you're right, when you're in a gym and especially when you're trying to learn like a high technical skill, you can do nothing but be present in the moment. Because if you're not present, you're not likely to learn it well.
Mm.
Um, you know, 101 things are happening. You have to be intentional about being in your body in that moment. And I think if you can kind of bottle that feeling and think that how does that feel when I'm in that moment and then take that into your everyday life, I think I try to be really intentional about thinking, okay, like I'm cooking dinner. How can I just cook dinner instead of trying to be on my phone and trying to book appointments and doing all this? And I think I'm definitely not there yet, but it is something that I'm on a journey with and something that I think really transfers over from my gym career, as it were.
I have a little team of coaches that I love.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, Robin, Robin Nickel is going to be in the CrossFit Games in her age group on Labor Day
Mm.
weekend in Alabama. Go, Robin. She helps me with programming. And one of the things that I'm learning or have learned from her has to do with uh, patterning my workouts and getting my body used to a particular flow throughout the week. And I think good programming does that and even expands to be a month long or 6 weeks long of a particular program. But what she's teaching me, if I can try to articulate this for everyone, is my body has actually gotten used to a particular schedule. And I want to sometimes change that, but she sort of resists. I don't know if it's intentionally or if it has to do with, I haven't had this conversation with her, but I don't know if it's intentional or just the way that she trains herself or the way she trains people. But now what happens is my body knows what's happening Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And if I flip a day, it doesn't work out as well because my body has now this flow of working out. And it's absolutely amazing to me because it's not that I can't add something or do something a little different, but in terms of the way the workouts are structured, my body has an expectation of what is happening throughout the week. And so it brings up for me a dual kind of focus on both a discipline and maybe getting into focus that I mentioned before, discipline, but also to me, it's like, I don't know, like my body has its own knowledge or something about what it needs or what it expects. And I don't know even how to articulate it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, and what the takeaway is from that in relationship to how we can transfer it. I mean, I'm even thinking about learning about how to get yourself used to particular patterns. And when we cultivate any kind of habit, that our bodies will actually respond to us. And if those are good habits, then what we're doing is cultivating patterns that are like high functioning. I don't know. Do I make sense?
Yeah, I guess it's almost developing like I guess like neural pathways, isn't it?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
and like I guess your body then develops this kind of intuition of like I know like you wake up every day and it like your body and your mind are having this conversation of I know what I need now in order to function. I don't know if that's necessarily like what word we'd give to that. Um,
It's like it almost makes discipline easy. because our bodies want it.
Yeah.
So if I drink a hot tea every night, my body kind of becomes accustomed to it. And if it's a particularly good one for my system, it's like that now I want this tea. Like I've let my little cellular system here know this is good for you and take it in, and then it wants it, and then it becomes less
Yeah.
conscious and more automatic.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's kind of like thinking about, I don't know that it's addictive, because I don't know that it's addictive, but maybe it has some parallels with that. But it's like instilling in yourself this good patterning.
When you start building habits at the start, like it is an effort. And you can't rely on motivation. It needs to become like a practice that you intentionally do. And at the beginning, it's not easy and it's an effort, but then like it almost like enmeshes with who you are and it becomes more of your identity.
Mm.
And I think that's the shift. Like I would say for me now, like I'm the same as you. I have a routine. I know what I'm doing from one day to the next. And yes, like things get mixed up and like I'll go on vacation and my training will change. But I know I work out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. And it doesn't need it. It is a part of my identity. And I guess it's funny because being part of faith institutions, I was always told like that was wrong. You should have nothing in as part of your identity except, your spirituality. But actually, like now I really claim that, and it is something that I need for my well-being and for, you know, me to be able to function in the way that is competent in a way that makes me feel good. And again, like I don't know whether that then at what point it then flips into addiction, and that's maybe like another conversation. But it is so enmeshed and so a part of who I am. And I guess it is like an identity thing.
I want to make one comment about the addiction piece. I agree, it's a whole nother conversation.
Mm,
But I think that one line has to do with the ability. I was just thinking about other sports. I mean, one thing that CrossFit does is it enables you to do other sports a little easier. So I'm
yeah.
getting ready to, go to Northern Italy and do some hiking. I know already that there will be an adjustment in my body, but I can handle the endurance, I can handle the climb, I can handle the fear stimulus because of CrossFit. Like I just know this. And
Mm,
and when I go there, I don't need to be doing the CrossFit workouts. Like that, it's not, the ability to leave it for a while is a little different. But I think to the point that we're trying to highlight is things like persevering to go to the gym, or
yeah.
having the discipline and motivation. Those things just kind of dissipate. And I think it goes back to one quality of CrossFit that you bring up, which is the element of play. It becomes fun. Like it's fun to go. It's fun
Mm,
to go to the gym, and then it just becomes part of your life. And like, I mean, one of the greatest things for me is that I know I'm going to keep doing this, and I can do it for the rest of my life because
yeah.
it's so adaptable to different age groups. The other thing, I mean, I really do want to underscore that if someone said to me, you have such perseverance, going to the gym every day or whatever, doing the schedule, my schedule is similar to yours. It's like, it's so easy for me now. Not that it was ever hard, because I always enjoyed exercise, but it is really easy. I just don't even think about it. It's
Yeah.
just part of my day. It's a part of my discipline. I will say where perseverance comes in for me, if that's a quality that we want to bring up, is in finishing a workout that's really frigging hard.
Yeah.
And just like when you
Amen.
slow down and I am sucking right now, but I just have to finish this. that that is something. And or where your
Yeah.
heart is, you're like, I cannot do another one of these, and you just have to slow it down so you can finish. I mean, and it's a little humiliating sometimes, like it, for me anyway. That's the perseverance part for me. That's where the perseverance is. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I would 100% agree. Like, I'm the same as you. I was actually having this conversation with my boyfriend recently, and we were talking about kind of shared values and our non-negotiables. And we were talking about how for us, like the fitness and specifically CrossFit at the moment for us, it is a non-negotiable. And I do not have to think about it. When my alarm goes off, I know I'm having my coffee, eating, and going to the gym. It's not like, oh, like I don't know whether I should go. Should I go? Like it's a non-negotiable. Obviously, your seasons of being sick or whatever, and that changes, but it is so a part of who I am that I do not have to think twice about it. However, when I get in the gym, this is where like humility and perseverance
Mm,
really play in for me. So I
mm,
like I'm a pretty like decent athlete at a lot of things. Weightlifting comes very naturally and very easy to me. Gymnastics does not. I don't love it. And I don't love it because I'm not good at it. And so that is like my ego. And I've been doing CrossFit for 12 years, and there are still elements of gymnastics that I'm not great at. And that's because I pick sometimes the easy things that I'm good at. And it's only now that I've been called out on my own BS where I'm like, Ash, like you should be a little bit further along the journey in your gymnastics. And it's because you're afraid of it, because you know that you're afraid of failure and it's hard. And I think that is where perseverance comes in for me.
mm,
And so now 3 times a week, I've got to do my muscle up work, no excuses. Um, and building that habit again, that translates into other areas of my life. I'm about to start a PhD, and I know that from the habits that I've built in when I show up to work out, I know that that is going to make my academic journey so much easier because I've learned how to build habits. I've learned to push through when it gets hard. I don't want to quit when it gets hard. And I know how to put those routines in place so that it becomes a part of my identity. So reading and studying soon for me will be a part of who I am, and I won't have to like, oh, this is an effort.
I think you bring up an important point related to the way we haven't said this word, I don't think yet, which is the idea that it translates.
Yes.
I think that's an important word, that what we're doing in one area of our lives will actually translate to another. So this idea of translation is that one part of our lives will translate naturally to another part of our lives. And when you were talking, I thought about, for many of us, having a rich spiritual life has value. And so it's a non-negotiable to go to church, or if you're not doing a practice that includes a temple, a religious institution, maybe it's going to take a walk in nature every day, or one practice for me is being near water. That the activity of taking care of that need transfers to other things. And I think it's very rare that I hear people talk about how physical exercise and the engagement with our bodies translates to other parts of our lives also.
Yeah.
And that's just so important, because by neglecting our bodies as this part is
Mm,
really like negligent of the whole in some way. And so
yeah.
this you point to or underscore when you use the word non-negotiable, which I really liked. I mean, to get into another aspect of this in terms of trait, there is a certain peace that comes with attending to this idea of our full embodied self. So the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, all of these things, the social, need our
Mm,
attention. And so often the physical becomes a chore instead of this um piece that allows for growth, learning. And learning is another one. I mean, this is one thing I love about CrossFit. I'm always learning
yeah.
something. Always. I do not walk into there. Maybe I have a bad day once in a while, or I'm like, well, but in general, I'm learning something about myself, my body, someone else, a
Yeah.
particular skill. I don't know what it will be any given day, but there's always learning. And so that to me is, I mean, now I'm there.
Yeah. Yes. there is not a day where I walk in the gym and leave it without having learned something. You're right, whether it's about my interior life, um, whether I've learned a new skill, whether I've learned someone else's story and their why behind being in here. It is like, it's like a school. Like, there is so much richness in life, that we find inside the CrossFit gym. And I just like, and I think that then, but we need to approach that with humility, because it can be very easy to, I've had a bad day, I'm going to put my blinkers on, I'm going to walk in, and like, that's fine. Actually, there was a girl in my gym who came in yesterday, who clearly was struggling, and she'd had a bad day, and she's like, I just, like, you could tell she didn't want to be coached. She just needed to move her body. Well, I've learned something, because I've learned, somebody just needs this to be their safe haven today. And she's learned something about herself, because she messaged me to say, I realized that, like, I've had a really bad day, but the gym is my space where I can come and just, like, leave it behind, move my body, get back to myself again. So she's learned something. And there's just so much that happens in here. It's amazing. It's a miracle.
I like that word too. On my list, I have, and I'll put it in front of my computer, play, the element of play or have fun, as being part of the lessons that translate from this CrossFit experience into other parts of life. The concept of being present, being radically present in many cases. The idea of concentrating or concentration, focus. You mentioned, I really like this, when you're cooking. So when you're doing an activity, you're actually doing that activity. And what does it actually feel like to do that? It's fascinating to me, to realize, oh my gosh, I've gone like 20 minutes without thinking about anything else. The concept of perseverance and what that looks like in different cases, and the fact that perseverance may mean different things to different people, depending on the case, which also makes this such a fascinating thing to talk about, right? This development of traits. The concept of discipline, you mentioned humility, and the idea of learning and continuing to accrue knowledge about our interior life through an exterior practice.
Yeah, brilliant. I'd also add on there possibly vulnerability, because actually, as you was talking and you said about being fully present in a meal or, in the gym, my little heart was like, oh, that's actually really scary, because when you're present, you are saying, like, right now, this is the only thing that matters, not the million and one things that are going on around here. And it's vulnerable, I think, to walk into a gym and say, I'm going to set everything down for an hour just to be with me and my community. Like, that can feel quite vulnerable, but has such a profound effect on the rest of your life if you'll just allow yourself to be present in that moment.
I think that itself is a great way to end, and B, something very important to give more thought to.
Yes, agreed.
All right. Thank you for today.
Thank you. This is
everyone.
great.
Take
Thank you
care.
so much.